Well, Paul Thurrott, after a very long wait and a lot of looking at the calendar, the second day of spring has finally arrived.
And what has it brought with it, Brad?
Loops! Which is the segue I tried to do yesterday until Paul told me that it's not actually coming till today.
I was like, listen, I'm not the best when it comes to dates, but I'm pretty sure it's not today. I thought it was Thursday.
Yeah.
So, I'm not going to promote myself as getting this one right, but
If we averaged our two expected launch dates, we nailed it per usual.
yep. There you go.
Go with that. So Loops, public preview, now available. I guess, yeah, now
Well,
available. So you can go
Now
download
available
that.
as yeah, but what does that mean though? Like, what's the, where do you,
Well,
like,
there's a
do
couple
you actually
downsides
just
to
get
this.
in? Yeah.
One, there's no native Windows app. Like, you got to go through the web. So you go to, I think it's loop.microsoft.com.
Okay.
And then you can get access to this thing.
Yeah, there was a, let's see what it says. Yeah. I gotta, anyway, continue. I'll
Anyways,
figure this
so
out. Yeah.
I've been using this thing for about 10 days, something like that,
Mhm.
give or take. I can't remember exactly when I got access to it. And
Okay.
the great news is, if you like Notion, you're going to love it because
That is the great news. Yeah.
it is very simple. The one downside, there's a couple downsides. One, no native Windows app yet, or I don't know, ever. I don't know if they've clarified, but it doesn't have all the same keyboard shortcuts that Notion does. So, like, it does the same, like, if you type a slash, like, you can get access to the context menu and all that stuff. But, like, on Notion, if you hit a plus sign, it gives you a bullet point. And so there's a lot of,
I see. Yeah.
like, it's really close. And there are keyboard
All right.
shortcuts to get to this stuff, and you just kind of got to relearn them. But the layout is the same. The co-authoring is very good. I've used that a couple times.
When you say the same, you mean the same as Notion.
Yes.
So let me just interject one thing here really quick. I find just looking at it for 1 second. Good. So, and based on what you were saying earlier, how you could do slash and get commands. My primary one of my complaints about Notion, there are actually a couple, but one is that you can't easily type some text and do a keyboard shortcut that makes that thing turn into like a heading.
Mm-hmm.
That's something, we've been doing this in Word for 25 years. You can click on a menu and say something like change to, and then select from the list what you want to change. But it's just not, it's not the way I do things.
Yeah,
So
Notion
Notion,
has
you
its
have
quirks.
to,
Don't
you have
get me
to
wrong.
kind of,
It absolutely
You know what the
does.
other one is? You can't
What?
change the size of text. But whatever. Anyway,
Yeah.
at all. No, I mean like at all. You can change the style of the text to a heading or something, but you can't change the size. Anyway, so you have to think proactively. You have to think slash H2 or whatever you're going to do, and then make it. You have to change the way you do things.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I was looking forward to in Loop was it's a Microsoft product. Obviously, they'll handle the way they handle things in OneNote and Word, because that's where people are coming from.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I can see right now that's not the case at all. It's exactly not exactly. Like you type the slash. You actually can't type slash H2 to get to an H2. You have to type slash and then select H2, which is like, okay, whatever.
Right. That's what I mean. Like this, it's like you're so close. You're so close.
Here's the problem. They're too close, Brad. Like, it's one thing. Look, this thing, I'm looking at it right now. This thing is Notion. It's Obsidian. It's everything that's like those things. It is an abject ripoff of those products.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little prettier, actually. There's kind of more colors going on, but whatever. Dude, why is it so much like Notion? Like, why is it exactly, well, not exactly, but it's 90% Notion and 0% anything that came before it in the Microsoft space.
Well, it's the same reason that OneNote looked like Evernote. They get scared of these things that come up, so they build a product that cannibalizes that market, which they do very well.
I think I don't think OneNote. I think OneNote arrived before Evernote.
No, it did. But then they stopped caring about it. And then Evernote, this is like, we're talking like a decade ago now, probably more than that. Evernote started to get some traction in the market. And then that's when Microsoft rebooted their OneNote effort, was after Evernote started to get traction.
I see.
And then Notion comes along.
I find this level of copying to be alarming. It's not going to stop me from switching to it, but yikes. Like, yikes, dude. Like, this thing is yikes. If you put the Notion logo up there, I'd be like, oh, they changed, they updated the style a little. It's nice.
Oh yeah,
It's Notion. It is
it is.
Notion. I don't know how I feel about this. A
The
little
other
weird.
big thing that's not readily obvious
Yeah.
with it is if you select a component on the thing on the page
Yep.
and you go make it a loop component. It's
Mm,
actually it haven't had it work yet, which is the biggest reason I'm like, oh, this is awesome because I need it to work first, like
right.
seeing a working example. You can
Well,
select an object, make it a loop component, and then if you paste it into Teams today tries to resolve it, display it, but it can't. There's a permissions thing that's blocking it. But
this is so.
but interestingly, is that Microsoft's baked in some permission stuff because if you go back to that loop component, you can click on it and see where you've actually shared it and who has access to it, and you can manage it.
I, uh,
Not helpful for you,
so
I know.
no, no, no. What you really need is to be able to select something in Excel and say make it a loop
Well,
component.
yes. So that's
So
the
yeah. So making a loop component in Loop is like whatever. But dude, I just again, I'm just seeing this now for the first time. Um, I'm very familiar with Notion. I've been using it now for a long time. I use it every day. I use it for a lot of things, by the way. I
Mhm.
use it for personal and private stuff.
Yep,
It's a great
same.
tool. If you mouse to the left of a component, whatever it is, an object, whatever in Notion, there's a little graphic that has it's six dots,
Hmm.
like a domino or a dice or something. I guess like a domino more than a dice. And you click on that, and that's where you get to that thing I was talking about. You get a menu with, I'm going to call it 9 items in there. And one of them says turn into, and this is how you change this thing from text into a heading or something, right? That's what I was talking about
Hmm.
earlier. So when you go to Loop and you next to it, there's a little icon thing. It's got six dots on it, like a domino. And when you click on it, a menu appears. Does this sound familiar?
Hmm.
It's exactly the same, Brad,
Oh yeah.
except for one thing. I would say that Loop is to Notion today as Teams was to Slack the day that they announced the preview. Not quite,
Mm.
right? It's got some of it. So,
Yeah.
like the menu you get off of the domino, I'm going to call it, only has two options in Loop, but it has like 8 or 9 in Notion because Notion is a more mature application,
Hmm.
right? One of those, by the way, is the thing you're talking about, create Loop component. I, I, I I just I can't stress enough how weird this is to me that this thing is it Jesus. It's like a it's like they rebranded Notion.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Except that you're not gonna have to pay for it because it'll be included in whatever. And
Well,
yeah,
I am paying for it because but okay, yes. Yeah, yeah. I
yeah,
don't pay for Notion, by
indirectly.
the way, but yeah, okay. Anyway, like I said, the fact that this thing is part of my Microsoft account, the fact that this thing is stored up in my OneDrive account, no doubt, the fact that this thing will integrate with the Microsoft tools that I do use and you'd use, as
Hmm.
you have a great example with the Excel thing, um, is why people are going to, yes, there's no doubt about it. But in the same way that Slack was so outraged by Microsoft Teams, to the point where there's actually a lawsuit over it, although we know now, and I think we will see hopefully with this product that that the Microsoft product eventually vastly outstripped what was available in the thing they were ripping off. I mean, it's tough to watch this. I mean, Microsoft has such a rich history of doing this to other companies.
Oh yeah.
It's like riding a bike. It's weird. It's weird seeing it this overtly. And I don't know what the problem for Notion is that there are 100 of these things out in the world. It's just that when you're Obsidian, nobody gives a crap. But when you're Microsoft, it's like they're going to put us out of business.
Yep.
Right?
Microsoft does this a lot, more so than you would think. Big and small. They release free apps that hurt
Yeah.
independent third-party Microsoft developers. Like everything that's in PowerToys is an application that nobody
know.
can build now
I
and make
know.
money from.
This is what Apple used to do. This probably still does, but Apple was infamous for a while. They called it like Sherlocking, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
the Sherlock thing that became their search product was a third-party thing that someone
Yep.
had made, and they ripped it off. They just stole it. Microsoft did this with Winget, right? The command line environment for package management.
Mm-hmm.
There was an open source, I think it was open source, or there was a product made by an individual. They brought him in to interview him. He thought he was getting a job at Microsoft. They loved what he was doing. Said, we'll get back to you, ghosted him. And then 6 months later, they announced Winget, which was a complete ripoff of his product. Yeah, I had this conversation with Laurent yesterday. And I'm trying to remember what it was. It was something just like this. It was something
Mm.
about Microsoft being terrible. And I said, this is a great. It was Microsoft partners with OpenAI, pours billions of dollars into them, and then has internal messaging about how you tell people not to use their product, but use the one we're making because blah, 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 whatever. Like their thing is not as safe. It's not as good. Oh, they're starting to charge for it now, you know?
Hmm.
And it's like, uh, this is big tech sucks. They're terrible. And is Microsoft like better on some scale than most of big tech? Yes. But is it a really low bar? Absolutely. They're
I
still
can I can
freaking
bring one a little
terrible.
closer to home, Paul Thurrott.
Yeah, here we go. Oh, is it going to be like a little
For
startup?
Stardock
Yeah,
specifically.
okay.
So Stardock has a product called Multiplicity, which is
Hmm.
it's a great product, Paul Thurrott. It's a wireless and virtual KVM. It does a whole bunch of stuff from
Yeah.
multiple device, multiple screen stuff. Microsoft released a thing called Mouse Without Borders, which is like 30% of what Multiplicity does. It does just enough after
Hmm.
Multiplicity was released many years ago. It does just enough that it's like, it's an alternative. And it's free, of course, because Microsoft just gave it away.
Yeah.
So it's,
Yeah, and maybe it will become a power toy, and then maybe it
yeah.
becomes part of Windows 12 or something
Yep.
because they've been doing that a lot too.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, look, most people are familiar with Start 11, of course, and its predecessors,
Yep.
and because this started with Windows 8 when Windows 8 didn't have a Start menu, right?
Hmm.
And you know, it's impossible to think to know, you make the product and they're looking at it and they're saying, okay, there's some good ideas here.
Yep.
And we're going to implement some of these in Windows over time, and over time, the value of that product becomes less and less. Although, Start 8, 10, 11 now have obviously endured and done well because Microsoft is terrible in
Yeah.
other ways that have to do with quality. But yeah. Anyway, I can't. I'm sorry. I don't mean to keep repeating myself. I am shocked. I knew it was going to be like that. I mean, we all knew this. I saw the early developer preview of it or
But I mean,
whatever. It's like you didn't even change the little icons. Like I'm like, what the like? It's crazy. It's exactly the same.
hmm
Here's why this is messed up. There are literally billions of people in the world using Microsoft Word and the rest of Office every day. They have a deep set knowledge and memory of how the product works. And this product instead is aping the way this thing used by perhaps hundreds of thousands or maybe low millions
hmm
is using. And yikes. Like that is fascinating to me.
No, it really, see, and this is what I mean. Like, you bundle this with like all their AI stuff, and it's
Yeah.
like this gets into that realm of anti-competitiveness because to
Yeah.
your exact point, they're not replicating their own processes. They're
No, they're
looking
not.
at a
It's
competitor
not
and saying, we can
that's
build
right.
something better,
It's
faster than that.
well, look, processes is one thing. I mean, we can accept that the world has evolved. We're doing things in different ways. I think the chat-based collaboration thing that is Slack/Teams is a great example because in the old world, old person Microsoft way of doing things, we round robin documents on Outlook email or whatever, and this is a different way of doing things. It's a better way of doing things. It's a more modern way of doing things. And they put them next to each other side by side. And I think we all agree eventually Teams is what wins here. It's just
Yeah.
we're the world is changing. I don't mind. In fact, you give them a little credit for understanding these legacy tools are going to be usurped someday by these more modern ways of doing things, creating content, collaborating in real time on content, et cetera, et cetera. That's fine. But the evolution from the old to the new is kind of non-existent right here. I
Hmm.
mean, maybe that changes over time. It's at least with, I mean, Teams. Well, Teams does not look like a classic Office app, but I don't know. It seems like it fits in a little better. Like this is like one of those apps that used to only be available on the Mac. You
Yeah.
know, it's just this kind of like happy, sunny, lots of icons and emojis, and it's weird. All right, I'm gonna go through my what is it, 7 stages of grief or something or whatever it is.
How do you feel about
Acceptance.
Bard? Bard's available. Yay.
Well, not to me, it isn't, Brad, because
Oh,
I
I
have a
have
Google
access.
Workspace account. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I do have a Gmail account. I got on the list. I got on the Adobe thing today. So
Oh, did
Adobe
you?
also has yeah. And of course, during the beta, you can't generate images with this and use them commercially, so it's not as. But it's an experimental thing. I've been pumping some phrases I used on DALL-E, for example,
Yeah.
to have it generate art. It's it looks nice. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
How is Bard compared to say
It's
the Bing?
honestly, as long as I go to the Bing. But here's the thing: like, here's always going to be the little asterisks next to literally everything that
Yeah.
we have to say about this. Is Google owns Bard, Microsoft does not own OpenAI.
Yep.
That is always going to be Microsoft's Achilles heel, at least for the immediate future.
100%. And actually, you can't be a Microsoft user. Well, you could be, but a Microsoft enthusiast or have any knowledge of history to appreciate the fact that the best tool doesn't always win. For a long, long time, Windows was not the most sophisticated windowing environment or whatever, but it won because Microsoft and predatory and blah, 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 whatever. So Google, by virtue of their dominance, will improve this thing. And but they'll have a user base because they're Google, and because Google search is just right now unassailable, it seems. So yeah. Plus, I'm not convinced this thing won't be as good. I think they're still shackling this somewhat, which is an amazing condition for me that Google of all companies is showing some form of restraint, on unfettered compute capabilities. But that's what they're doing. So we'll see.
No podcast tomorrow. You're flying home, correct?
That is correct. Yep.
So
Yeah,
we'll be
tomorrow's
back on
gonna be a long
Friday
day.
for the last podcast for the next week-ish or so.
Yeah, God knows where I'm going to be tomorrow or Friday, Brad. Well, when that camera comes on, it's going to be a surprise to both of us.
Hopefully it's not prison.
Well, I'm leaving all options open.